TOEFL iBT listing qismi practice testini boshlaymiz. Bu yerda practice test 1 16-trackni ochib, audiolarni eshitishni boshlashimiz kerak.
Listen to part of a lecture in a philosophy class. The professor has been talking about ethics.
Okay, if we're going to discuss goodness and justice, what makes an individual good or a society just or virtuous, then we need to start with the ancient Greeks. So we'll start with Plato's philosophy. Now, some of you may have studied Plato's philosophy in some other course, so this might be easy. Okay, at the risk of boring you, let me give you just an overview of Plato's ethical theory. Plato says the soul has, and by soul, he simply means that which animates the body, gives it life. Anyway, he says that the soul has 3 separate parts, called faculties, which I'll come back to. He believed that goodness in an individual was to be found when the 3 parts of the soul worked together, when they weren't in conflict but existed in harmony. A good or just person will have a soul in which the 3 faculties work well together. So how does he arrive at that analysis? Well, he starts out in his very famous work, The Republic. He starts out by saying it's very difficult to get a grasp on what the individual soul looks like. So, to get some idea of what the individual human soul is like, he says we should study the structure of society, what kinds of people and activities every society has to have. He argues that every society has to have 3 groups of people, workers, soldiers, and leaders, and each has a sort of defining characteristic. Every society has to have workers, like farmers, or people who work in factories, producing all the things that we need for everyday life. And according to Plato, the key feature of workers is that they're focused on their own desires or appetites, interested in satisfying the needs of the body. So workers are associated with desire. Okay? Now, if you live in a society that has a good amount of wealth, good agriculture, good industry, other societies are probably going to try to take it. So you need a class of soldiers who are supposed to protect the state from external threats. Well, these soldiers, they're going to be in dangerous situations quite frequently, so you need people with a lot of high spirit, an emotional type of individual. Emotion is what characterizes this group. And then, Plato says, the 3rd group you need is leaders. Their main role will be to think rationally, to use their reason or intellect to make decisions. As decision makers, leaders determine what the state is to do, how the affairs of the citizens are to be run. Plato then asks himself, okay, assume we've got such a society with these 3 groups. When will this society be a good, a just society? Well, you can only have a good society when its 3 parts are working well together, each doing its proper thing. And Plato believes this can only happen if workers and soldiers learn moderation or self-control. But why? Why do workers and soldiers have to learn self-control? Well, how can a society flourish if the workers and soldiers don't control their desires and emotions? Plato thinks that if they aren't under control, workers will sleep too much and play too much, so they're not going to get their jobs done. And soldiers need to channel their high-spiritedness in a certain direction, precisely by being courageous. But you're not going to get that automatically. You need to teach them this kind of moderation. So you need an educational system that, first of all, will train the leaders so that they'll make good decisions, so they'll know what's wise. Then make leaders responsible. Turn over to them the education of the other 2 groups. And through education, build a society so that the workers and soldiers learn to use their intellect to control their desires and emotions. If you had all that, then, for Plato, you'd have a good or just society. Now take that picture, that social, political picture, and apply it to the individual person. You remember about the soul? That it consists of 3 separate parts or faculties? Can you guess what they are? Desires, emotions, and intellect. The characteristics associated with the three groups of society. And can you guess how Plato defines a good or just person? Well, it's parallel to how he characterizes a good or just society. The three parts have to be in harmony. In each of us, our desires and emotions often get the better of us and lead us to do foolish things. They're in conflict with the intellect. So to get them to all work together, to coexist in harmony, every person needs to be shaped in the same way that we've shaped society, through the educational system. Individuals must be educated to use their intellect to control their emotions and desires. That's harmony in the soul.
Endi savollarga javob berishni boshlaymiz. Why does the professor talk about Plato's description of society? Nimaga Plato's description of society ni? Demak, Platoni jamiyatni demak tasvirlaganini, tasvirini gaplashadi, aytadi. Endi ko'ramiz. To explain why society face certain problems, nimaga jamiyatlar ba'zi bir muammolarni ko'rishini haqida ma'lumot yo'q. To point out problems with Plato's ethical theory, Platoni teoriyasi bilan muammolarni ko'rsatgani yo'q. To introduce students to the political structure of ancient Greece, studentlarga Gretsiyani political structure, ya'ni politik strukturasi haqida gapirish xohlamayapti u, gapirgani ham yo'q. To help explain Plato's view about the nature of human soul. Demak, o'quvchilarga Platoni qarashlarini ko'rsatib beradi va nima haqida qarashlarini. Demak, odam, inson, soul, ruhi, tabiatini ko'rsatish uchun demak qaratgan, inson ruhiyatini qanaqa qilib, inson ruhiyatini tasvirlash uchun bu jamiyatni ham tasvirlab bergan. Shuning uchun 4-javobni olamiz. What are 2 points that reflect Plato's views about education? Demak, qaysi biri bu yerda Platoni demak ta'lim bo'yicha demak fikrlari. All people can be trained to become leaders. Bu ma'lumot berilmagan. Lider bo'lish mumkin degan berilmagan. All people should learn to use their intellect. To'g'ri, o'zini intellektini ishlatish kerak. Leaders should be responsible for education of workers and soldiers. To'g'ri, liderlar ishchilar bilan soldatlarni ta'limiga demak responsible bo'lish kerak. Qara, demak e'tiborli va ответственный bo'lish kerak. All people should learn about the nature of human soul. Bu haqida ma'lumot yo'q. Odamlarni ruhiyati haqida o'rganish kerak degan gap yo'q. Shuning uchun 2 va 3 ni olamiz. Based on information in the lecture, indicate whether the statement below about the human emotion replaces beliefs held by Plato. Demak, bu quyidagilar qaysi biri Platoni fikri degan savolga javob berar ekanmiz. Demak, emotion is usually controlled by faculty of desire. Yo'q, bu Plato emas. Demak, no qilamiz buni. Emotion ought to be controlled by faculty of intellect. To'g'ri. Intellect bilan demak boshqarilishi kerak. Emotion is what motivates soldiers. Soldiers demak soldatlarni emotsiya motivatsiya qiladi. Demak, birinchisi no, ikkinchi, uchinchisi yes bo'ladi. According to Plato, what is the main characteristics of a good just person? Demak, yaxshi va oqil odamni asosiy xarakteristikasi, ya'ni qobiliyati, sifati nima? The parts of a person's soul exist in harmony. To'g'ri. Demak, odamni ruhiyatini qismlari garmoniyada bir-biri bilan demak kelishib yashaydi, demak mavjud bo'ladi. The person doesn't try to control other people. Boshqa odamlarni kontrol qilish haqida ma'lumot yo'q. Person's relationship with other people are harmonious. Boshqa odamlar bilan munosabatlar haqida ma'lumot yo'q. Person doesn't act in an emotional manner. Demak, emotsional demak harakat qilmaydi degan ma'lumot ham yo'q. Demak, 21 listen degan support 17 ni eshitib savolga javob berishga harakat qilamiz.
Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
Now, some of you may have studied Plato's philosophy in some other course, so this might be easy. Okay, at the risk of boring you, let me give you just an overview of Plato's ethical theory.
What does the professor imply about Plato's ethical theory?
Platoni etik teoriyasi bo'yicha nima aytmoqchi? O'qituvchi nimani nazarda tutyapti? Boring you dedi. Risk of boring sana demak sizlarni zeriktirib qo'yishi mumkin dedi. Bu zerikarli bo'lishi mumkin. It may be familiar to some students. To'g'ri. Bu boshqa demak kursda o'qigan bo'lishinglar mumkin. Shuning uchun ham sizlarni zeriktirib qo'yishi mumkin edi. Shuning uchun ham bu A variantni birinchi variantni olamiz. It will be discussed in more detail. Demak, keyingi darslarda ko'proq detal bilan demak muhokama qilish haqida gap yo'q. Not interesting. Bu ham to'g'ri javob. Zerikarli bo'lishi mumkin. Lekin oldingi gap, ya'ni sizlar bu haqida boshqa demak darslarda eshitgan bo'lishinglar mumkin degan gap uchun men birinchi variantni olishga demak qaror qildim. Bu bo'lishi mumkin. Demak, birinchi variantim asosiy fikrim bu ham bo'lishi mumkin deb hisoblayman. It's not a very complicated theory. Demak, qiyin emasligi haqida ma'lumot yo'q. 18-sini eshitamiz endi.
Listen again to part of the lecture. Then answer the question.
But why? Why do workers and soldiers have to learn self-control? Well, how can a society flourish if the workers and soldiers don't control their desires and emotions?
Why does the professor ask this?
Well, how can a society flourish if the workers and soldiers don't control their desires and emotions?
Professor nimaga shu savol bergan endi? Qana, agar qanaqa qilib jamiyat rivojlanishi mumkin agar ishchilar bilan soldatlar o'zining emotsiyalarini rivojlantira olmasa, demak, kontrol qilmasa. Bu retorik savol, ya'ni muhim degan ma'noda demak aytgan bu gapni. To find out if students have understood what you just said. Demak, studentlar tushunmaganligini topish uchun so'ramadi bu narsani. To just answer to the question she just asked. Demak, o'zi so'ragan savolga demak javob berish uchun aytdi, to'g'ri, chunki qanaqa qilib dedi va shunaqa javob berdi. Express disagreement with point made. Platoni fikriga qarshi ketmadi. To explain why harmony is difficult. Demak, garmoniyani, ya'ni kelishuvni qiyinlik haqida gap bergani yo'q. Shuning uchun ham ikkinchi variantni oldik. Xo'p, demak, endi javoblarni tekshirib chiqamiz birgalikda. Demak, 19dan boshlar ekanmiz. 18dan bosh, 17, 18dan boshlar, 17 4, 18 2 3. Bular to'g'ri. 19 no, yes. Demak, ikkinchi uchinchisi yes, birinchisi no, to'g'ri. 21 1. Demak, 21 to'g'ri. Demak, bu yerda 21da uchinchi javob ham to'g'ri bo'lishi mumkin degan, lekin bu xato ekan, ko'rganimizdek. Interesting uchun emas, demak, zerikarliligi, qiziqarli emasligi uchun emas, oldin ko'rganligi uchun ham sizlar bundan zerikib qolishlaring mumkin deb aytdi. 22 bo'ldi oxirgi savolimiz ekan shu. Demak, hammasi to'g'ri ekan. Keyingi audioni, demak, keyingi savollarni keyingi videomizda ko'rishingiz mumkin.